All right, guys, welcome back to Downtown Rams. As always, I'm your host, Alexis Kraft, joined here with my co host, Jake Ellenbogen. And guys, we are coming to you with episode 489, getting closer to that 500 mark, Jake. We're covering the offseason still for the Rams. We're going to talk about a couple different things today. But yeah, inching closer to our big 500th episode. That's wild.
It is wild. It's a lot of episodes, a lot of time being taken, a lot of content being put out there. And yeah, we're getting closer and closer and closer to it. And, I feel like, obviously it's tough during, this time of, the off season and everything. And, we got a lot to talk about, surprisingly, because the Rams decided to make our lives a little bit easier and go out and, make some moves and whatnot. So, yeah, that's pretty much where we stand.
Well, let's start off with the big news from Rams world, and that is our wide receiver room looks a little different. The Rams have signed DeMarcus Robinson, who was most recently with Baltimore, but I think most people recognize him from being on the Chiefs, where he was before Baltimore. He was in Kansas City for a few years, and Jake. This, I think, was surprising to a lot of people. It was surprising to me. It just wasn't on my radar. For starters, I wasn't even aware that Robinson was a free agent for some reason. So I was a little surprised when I saw the signing. And what I seem to be gathering amongst Rams fans is just the word why. I think a lot of people are kind of confused on why the Rams would go sign a receiver out of all positions. And I have to admit, I can understand where people would be coming from. So if you're somebody right now listening to this saying, well, I don't understand, why we went out and signed another receiver, I totally understand, because at first I kind of was a little like, it felt like a little bit of a curveball to me, Jake. But I think when you look at the Rams receiver room, you've kind of got Cooper Kupp, obviously wide receiver 1. Then you've got Van Jefferson, wide receiver 2. And then I don't think there's a clear wide receiver 3. I don't think there's a clear, 4 or 5, whatever. I think that you've kind of got this now interesting group, and they've really just brought in Robinson to contend. And I also think, we'll get into his skill set and everything like that. But Jake, why do you think the Rams went out and signed DeMarcus Robinson?
Yeah, I think this really speaks volumes to how they feel about the back end of the receiver core. I think they feel great about Cooper Kupp, obviously. They really like Van Jefferson, albeit he's going into a contract year. I think they like Tutu Atwell, and they like what Ben Skoranek adds and gives them different looks and what have you. But, I mean, for, people that are constantly like, Puka Nacua this, Puka Nacua that, like, I mean, you can only expect so much from a rookie receiver, right? And I can't stress that enough. It's not me coming off as necessarily trying to hate him. I like the guy. We've talked about that. But I think it's temper your expectations. They've now brought in 2 guys outside the organization into this receiver room. I don't think a UDFA is making this team in the wide receiver room. I don't think Lance McCutcheon has a shot in hell now with the addition of DeMarcus Robinson. I just don't see it. And so when you look at DeMarcus Robinson, his ability to stretch the field, play the deep ball, whether, it's back shoulder fade, and, his ability to, kind of turn his body around, make the catch, be in the right position. But also, Alexis, the most important thing when you're coming off a season where you only won 5 games, flip flop of the year prior, and you're dealing with a lot of injuries, the most key thing is to have guys that can stay on the field. And you look at DeMarcus Robinson, people say, why? Like, why did they go out and get him? Why didn't they get better receivers? Maybe they don't want better receivers. Maybe they just want a guy that they know is going to be there and be consistent and be like a model professional. They need to get some, I would say, experience in that room. And I think, Alexis, when you look at him, he hasn't missed a game in his career. So, you have the guy that is always on the field. You have a guy that can work inside, outside. He has more wide out snaps than anybody currently on the roster. Think about that for a second. He's got more snaps out wide than Cooper Kupp for his career. So he's got a lot of experience. He could be the number 2 guy. He really could. I mean, they could put Van in the slot. They could just have Kupp primarily in the slot, have Van on the outside with Robinson. But I think Robinson kind of changes everything. Adding him, he's got the size to play on the boundary. And who knows, maybe I know it sounds crazy because it's like, well, he had Patrick Mahomes, never blew up. he had a couple of games where he showed you what he could do, but I think really what comes down to, he was splitting time, like between guys like Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. And I think with the Rams, this is an opportunity where maybe he carves out a big role and he ends up having a really good year in that Stafford and Sean McVay offense.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing about DeMarcus Robinson is he is now the most veteran wide receiver in the room, which is saying a lot because he hasn't been playing for that long. Before the DeMarcus Robinson signing, I mean, Cooper Kupp was the veteran in the wide receiver room, and his first season was in 2017. DeMarcus Robinson's first season was in 2016, so he's only got a year on Cooper Kupp. So I think that it's going to, if anything, at least bring in a guy with a little bit more of experience. I think him and Cooper Kupp now are the two guys in there. I mean, Van Jefferson has experience as well, but it is a really young receiving room, and I think that the Rams are very aware of what they're doing right now. Like I said, I think aside from wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2, I think it's a wide open race for anybody. And I think that they've got a lot of different skill sets between Robinson and Skoranek and Atwell and Puka Nacua. It's kind of like you've got like 4 very different receivers almost. Like they all have very different skill sets, in my opinion. And when you watch them, they all look completely different. So I think the Rams are kind of just mixing and matching and seeing what they can do. And if anything, guys, it's depth. I think we're all acutely aware of what could happen to a team when you have injuries at a position. And the last thing we would want is, the offensive line to finally stay healthy, but then all of our receivers go down and we have no depth there. So I like the DeMarcus Robinson signing. I think, he's going to add kind of like a fresh flavor into a room, like I said, that has a lot of different things going on. And I'm excited to see what the Rams could do there with him. But Jake, I kind of mentioned the offensive line just now, so I want to kind of circle back to offensive line because there's a free agent name kind of running around, the interwebs between Rams fans of someone they would like to see the Rams sign, an offensive lineman. He's been on our show before he was drafted, and that is Dalton Reisner. Who is an interior offensive lineman, has played guard for the Broncos for the past 4 seasons. Jake, do you think there's any validity to this rumor, or do you think that Rams fans are maybe just getting a little ahead of themselves because he is kind of a big name and he's still a free agent?
Yeah, certainly. So you and I both like Dalton Reisner. I did a little digging and I came up with nothing. Right now, I don't think the Rams are looking to make any sort of play in free agency. Doesn't mean that'll change. Like injury happens in the offensive line and say they lose, a guy like Bruss again. I think they'll be the first ones on Reisner's phone. Like, hey, come over, but at the moment, I think they feel pretty decent about the offensive line. They mentioned Mike McAllister, at least Sean McVay did, as a guy that they, really like the way he's playing at the center position, UDFA. So, we've seen it before. Rams keep guys that come in as undrafted rookie free agents and they develop them. Obviously the big one here is the most important position on the offensive line is either left tackle or center. And their left tackle is currently expected to be manned by a UDFA in Alec Jackson. So it kind of goes to show you can't really just brush those guys off. But I think the intrigue is there. And if, say training camp comes along and Dalton Reisner is, he's lowered the value, the contract won't be as big. He's going to sign a 1-year prove it deal. If it comes down to that, maybe the Rams are like, you know what? Why not? Right? We have the cap to do it. I will say, in addition, I think everyone wants to know, Alexis, what the hell is going on with the Rams restructuring wide receiver Cooper Kupp, saving him over $10 million in cap. I know everyone went nuts, like, oh, it's DeAndre Hopkins, it's Dalvin Cook. I'm going to go with none. It's not anybody. I think the important thing here is it could be Reisner if he's cheap enough. Could be a kicker. We saw them move on from Christopher Dunn. But this moment in time, Alexis, in my opinion, this is just to sign a massive, massive draft class. This is double the regular limit. Like normally you get 7 picks. First, second, third, fourth, sixth, and seventh. Fifth, sixth, and seventh. They had 14. So it's not the usual, okay, we have this, set aside for our draft picks. No, you have to pay that. And so this goes into that. This goes into Alexis. You have to pay guys, coming off the practice squad, which they did a lot of last year. I mean, that's kind of, where we're at here, is that I think that's all it really is. But if they were going to do anything, I think Reisner makes sense, because I think you can never have too many offensive linemen with versatility and experience in that room. We found that out last year.
Yeah, I feel like I'm a little skeptical on the Reisner thing, because I feel that the impression coming out of the Rams camp is that they really want to give Bruss that starting opportunity this year. And they're obviously going to start Avila, their second round pick, massive second round pick, stud, who I think is going to be great for our offensive line. So because of him and Bruss, I'm not sure that they would go ahead and spend money on Reisner, who's a clear NFL starter, who, even if he comes cheap, you're still going to have to give him, a significant amount of money because he's an NFL starter. So I'm not sure that I quite buy that if they were going to bring an offensive lineman on through free agency, that it would be a starter. Though I do say, I think Bruss, I've seen people say, well, Bruss struggled in preseason last year, right, before he got hurt. I think the Rams have faith. I think they're going to start him. So I don't really think that that's there's any validity to the idea that maybe they want to bring in Reisner or start. I won't be upset about it. Maybe they did that, and then they did, have Bruss start behind him, and, plug and play guard type of thing. Who knows? But I agree with you on the restructure thing. I think this is just for the draft class. I don't think that they're bringing in anybody. I'm sorry to everybody who thinks the Rams are going to make a go for DeAndre Hopkins. I don't think that is going to happen. I don't think that. I think people kind of blew up the restructure thing into more than it is, but you never know. I wouldn't be surprised if the Rams did go and find like a free agent that nobody's talking about, and we're like, oh, okay, that makes sense now. The last kind of, I think, big rumor right now, or the thing being thrown around, Jake, right now in Rams world, is the Chase Young trade. The rumored Chase Young trade, I should say. We don't know if he's being traded or not, but the rumor is that the Commanders are shopping him because he's going to have a contract year coming up, and they are in a rough position. So they think they might start, selling players, rebuilding, whatever. Do you think that, one, do you think that's even real? Do you think the Commanders are looking into trading Chase Young? And two, if they are, do you think the Rams would be a team that would be interested?
Yeah. This is interesting. I think like the graphic below, Chase Young, Danielle Hunter. I think Hunter is most likely to get traded, because the Vikings seem to be just in all like, yeah, we want to go for it, but we also want to blow up our team a little bit. I don't know. It's really weird over there in Minnesota. It's probably going to work out for them. I don't know. But when I look at Danielle Hunter and Chase Young, I see Chase Young is young, right? Danielle Hunter is older, he's 29, So I think the idea of trading Chase Young, Alexis, when I dove into his tape and just like the injuries, let's be honest, we're used to guys now coming back from ACL tears in 8 months, right? I mean, let's just say it. Like, we've gotten used to it. We've almost taken it for granted. Oh, he has an ACL tear. He'll be back next year. That was not even that back in the day. That was the end of your career. It was over, and with Young, I feel like it's taken him a little bit longer than others to come back. He's had some setbacks, and I think Washington got like, a little concerned, and they backed off, and they didn't pick up his 5th year option. This is the 2nd overall pick in 2020. Who they were fine, just like, we'll figure it out when we figure it out. Now, new ownership, right? Same head coach, but you got some new guys in there. And they did, they had guys like Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne and Montez Sweat emerge, and that could have something to do with it. But it's just weird to me to just kind of cut ties with him. Now, I'm not saying they've done that already. I'm saying that's kind of the vibe you kind of get at this point, right? Because the injury concerns, ACL tear November of 2021, doesn't play until week 16 of 2022. So that's a little concerning. But the guy looks like Nick Bosa 2.0 when he's healthy. And his first year onto the scene in 2020, 42 pressures, 7.5 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, all in his rookie year. Now, I think, like, to your question, I'm going to say he is available. And it feels weird to say that, but I'm going to say he's available because I don't think the Washington football team that doesn't even know what their team name is going to be because they didn't trademark it. I don't think that they are a good enough organization. And I'm not saying like the fans or the players, but I think they're really that organization, Alexis, that's going to, basically move on from Chase Young. And they might not get anything for him by not picking up that 5th-year option. They'll get a compensatory pick, but like, who cares? This guy has a chance to be the best pass rusher in football. And actually the ironic thing is that he's really an edge defender, not an edge rusher. Because when I watch Chase Young, it's everything about him. The way he sets the edge, the way he stops the run, his tackling ability. He can do it all. And I just think, I think Washington's that dumb. I think they're that dumb that they'll let him go. And they won't be able to compete with his price. So they'll be like, you know what? We got Montez Sweat. We got Daron Payne. We got Jonathan Allen. We'll figure it out. We'll trade him. And they'll try to get at least a second for him. And do I think the Rams would do that? Yeah, honestly. And here's why. Who is the heir to the throne when Donald's out? I don't think there's a guy currently on the roster. I mean, if you want to, put ridiculous expectations on, Kobe Turner or Byron Young, go ahead. I don't agree with it. Those guys can be really good. But the next guy to be like Aaron Donald, I mean, that would be Chase Young. That level, that talent. But the great thing about going out to get him instead of Danielle Hunter is that Hunter turns 29 October, right? Chase Young is a young 24 years old. And what I mean by that is he just turned 24. He's going into a contract year, which shouldn't exist because these type of players, Alexis, aren't normally available. But what we found, Jalen Ramsey's of the world aren't they're not normally available. The Rams went out and got Jalen Ramsey, young corner, should have been a guy that was franchised, been on the Jaguars for years, signed long-term. That's not what happened. Chase Young plays a more premium position. And if they are willing to let him go, I'm not saying I'd give up a first because let's be honest here. You and I may not think the Rams are going to be picking top 5, but a lot of people in the league do. So I'm not giving away a top 5 pick for a guy that, we can use it, right? We can kind of flip the script here. I like the guy, but the injury concerns are still there, right? Like Washington's telling us by the way they're reacting. So I wouldn't give up a first, but if it's like a second and a fourth or second and a fifth or second and even a third, I'd consider it. And I think the Rams would too, because, right now, this isn't all in to win it all. This is a guy that you can build around for the future. That's how it's justifiable for me. Danielle Hunter at 29 years old, like, that's the guy that takes over for Aaron Donald. Congrats. He's 2 years younger. We don't know how long Aaron Donald's going to play either. So I think Young at 24 years old is probably the only trade that makes sense. Because Brian Burns, I said it last year, it doesn't make any sense for the Panthers to get rid of him, and they're not going to. And any normal organization that knew what they were doing wouldn't trade a guy like Chase Young, because pass rushers like that, they're just rare.
Yeah, and I think that the Chase Young trade really has nothing to do with Chase Young. And the Washington will make it seem like it does, right? But
Yes.
It really has nothing to do with Chase Young. It has to do with, I think, Washington just has a lot going on. And I think that they're a mess.
Transfer.
Ownership, the team, I think the whole thing is just a dumpster fire. And I think they're just trying to figure it out. And usually when you have teams trying to figure it out, restarting, being shaken up, you can have somebody like Chase Young get away. You can have moments of weakness where you do that. So I agree. I do think Chase Young could potentially be up for sale. And I think that teams will try to trade for him. I would trade for him. I think that the Rams will be as well. I just think that, I think that the advantage for anybody wanting to trade for Chase Young is that he plays for the Commanders, because that is probably a team that you could grab almost anybody from in the near future. I think that they're just going to rebuild everything there, and they've got a lot to figure out. So, I think it's an interesting point.
He shouldn't be available. Like he
no,
should
he
not
shouldn't
be available.
He shouldn't be, but because he plays for Washington, I think he will be. Like I said, I think that they'll try to sell it off as, the injury concern and, whatever they need to do. But really, I think they could do a fire sale. And then at that point, maybe they won't even bother trying to do the PR or anything. They'll just be like, you know what? Everybody can go, give us your best offers. But I think that the Rams also, when you look at the Rams with the edge position, that is a position the Rams prefer to trade for or sign
Fowler.
in free agency than draft. It's not. I think that that's an interesting point when people bring up Chase Young. That just seems like the Rams like cup of tea when it comes to edge defenders, as they would prefer to trade than draft. Although they did draft Byron Young, but you got to have somebody on the other side, and Chase Young is young. So
he is.
We'll see. I don't know if this will be like a before the season thing. I don't know if it'll be a mid-season thing. I think we just really have to see what Washington does and what the vibe is there, because like I said, they're so unpredictable right now. And they haven't really confirmed the Chase Young thing. It's just kind of slowly gotten out there. So it's like, we don't know.
They're putting feelers out there, though. We could tell. We could definitely tell they're putting some feelers out there.
They want offers to come in for sure. I mean, they're trying to see who's going to inquire. So we'll see.
In case you didn't know, Chase Young is younger than Byron Young and Michael Hoyt, who are expected to start on the Rams. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, this doesn't come around very often, but when these opportunities come around, the Rams seemingly are always, when there's a scrum, they're always at the bottom of the pile. I mean, Jalen Ramsey, you look at, like, we just talked about Dante Fowler, right? I mean, Fowler is actually a great example, because Fowler's not like generational like Chase Young, you could argue, was. But Dante Fowler is a 3rd overall pick who tore his ACL, right? His first year. So it's not exactly like it, but it's interesting. And I just think, I understand not a lot of people are going to want to, make these trades and whatnot. And I get it. Trust me, after, this type of draft, it's fun to have draft picks. It really is. And we didn't even have a first rounder. So, it's fun. But no, I think when this stuff comes around, you have to take advantage of other teams, mishaps, weakness, stupidity, even. If we're going to go that far, you're like, okay, but still, like,
I don't disagree.
Do the Rams win a Super Bowl if, like, the Jaguars were smart and don't trade Jalen Ramsey? I don't think so.
I think, like, anybody who's like watched our draft streams knows that it gives me such anxiety when teams have players with the same last name and in the same position. And
I just realized that.
Knowing me and my luck, they would trade for Chase Young, and we'd have Chase Young and Byron Young always in at the same time, always playing the edge. And it would just give me so much anxiety, because they would keep saying Young, Young, and I would, like, it would freak me out. But I would like it,
and
though.
Running back Evans.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, that's fine because they're 2 different positions.
The Rams really wanted a Robinson at wide receiver, because as soon as Allen was gone, they're like, DeMarcus.
Yeah, that's their vibe. They like that name. What was it? The Jets? Remember when Michael Carter? They drafted both Michael Carters
in the same draft. That was so weird. And they're not related.
Are they both still on the Jets?
Yeah, they're both still on the Jets. They're both really good. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I know the running back, but
actually, I'd argue the defensive back's better.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, he's turned into a legit stud. Yeah.
Well, but I would love to be in that position to get the anxiety over both young edge defenders on. both young edge defenders on the Rams.
Would you give up a
Chase Young.
first?
For Chase Young? No. Because
I
not
mean,
now, because he's going into, I mean, no, because he's going into, he could be a free agent, theoretically.
well, they'll have 70 million cap space, although probably around 60 million because of the
If you
Cooper
had like
Kupp
a
thing.
verbal agreement, but like, I'm just saying that
The Rams would have to have a deal getting done while they're doing that. Like, you know what I mean? Like they would have to
I
be
don't
like,
know
all
how
right,
that's
Chase.
going to work.
It
they would
can,
have
but
to.
it's weird because the baggage he has with the injuries. The injury.
Yeah, I would feel, especially when we're finally about to have a first round pick. And I also think, like you mentioned, because of Washington's competency, I think we could get him for less than a first round pick. So I don't think we'd have to give it up. I really don't. So no, I wouldn't. I would give up a second.
Did you see Erica Donald? She commented on the Chase Young thing with like eye emoji, like when it first came out. And everyone's like, oh my God, what does this mean? As if like she can't say something without automatically being like she's the mouthpiece for Aaron Donald. Like it's funny how that works, but I get it. People are excited. People, they're looking for any reason to rally around this team. And I mean, I think if they were to go get Chase Young, any sort of this team's going to be tanking for Caleb goes out the window. It already should be out the window. Like, I don't think this team's picking top 5 unless something catastrophic happens. But at the same time, I think teams around the league think they're going to be bad. And so they might be able to be like, yeah, but our first is going to be really high. So we don't want to do that. We're going to go with our high second round pick, maybe 33rd, 34th overall, and call it a day. And maybe, maybe a player's in there. I've heard like people. I actually want to get your thoughts on this. Why is it they get DeMarcus Robinson, who's never had more than 600 yards in a season? And again, I'm not hating on that. I'm just saying, why is that mean Van Jefferson's out the door? Like, I keep hearing that, and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, if you want to say I don't think they bring back Van Jefferson, and if the Rams are bad at the deadline, they trade Van to a contender, sign me up for that. That makes sense. If you know he's not coming back and you're not a good team at the deadline, yeah, trade Van Jefferson, get what you can. But what I don't understand is DeMarcus Robinson joins the team. Now everyone's like, oh, we'll have Puka Nacua on the outside with Cooper Kupp. And I'm like, guys, Van Jefferson is going to be their starter, like next to Cooper Kupp and whoever else. Like, I don't know if they bring him back after the season, but they're not going to trade him now. Like, that doesn't, it's exactly what we were talking about earlier. But I don't know. Have you heard anything about that? Because like I always hear like, oh, throw Van Jefferson in for Chase Young. I'm like, why? I'd rather give up picks and keep our receivers like okay,
Robinson is a very different receiver than Jefferson. So I don't think that there was any. I think they're meant to complement each other. I don't think they're meant to compete with each other. And I don't think that they will. And I think Van Jefferson is just in such a prove it year right now, because I think it's going to go obviously one or two ways. I think if Van Jefferson plays well, he's going to get probably a somewhat big contract from the Rams. I think that he can't just be okay this year. I'll say that. I don't think that Van Jefferson can just coast. I think if he goes out there and it's like he doesn't really stand out in any way, or he doesn't, perform, probably have his best year as a receiver, I think the Rams could easily move on. Because I think at that point, it's like, he's going to be asking for a large contract. And it's kind of like, at that point, you got younger receivers in the room that are cheaper. But I don't think the DeMarcus Robinson signing has anything to do with how the Rams feel about Jefferson. I think if anything, it's more about depth, kind of like I said earlier. I think the Rams are just, they're getting a lot of different skill sets in the room.
I don't think there's a guy on the roster that's like DeMarcus Robinson. I mean, maybe Lance McCutcheon play style wise, but like, I mean, he hasn't done that in the NFL. He's done it in the preseason. And so I don't, that's the thing. I don't really, you nailed it. Like, they have different types of receivers that do different things, different skill sets, complement each other well. This could be a giant rotation with just Cooper Kupp and Van Jefferson starting. I mean, that's pretty much what it could end up being. It could be like the old Rams days where they had Mike Sims Walker and they brought in Mark Clayton and, that could be it. Brandon Gibson, Laurent Robinson, all like Chris Givens. Like when they would just kind of, all right, whoever's hot, get them the ball. But like, this is a rotation. No one's a third or a fourth or a fifth receiver. That is what this receiver room is kind of shaping up to be, because Atwell gives them a look that Ben Skoranek doesn't give him. But then Ben Skoranek can come in and play pseudo tight end and fullback and whatnot. And then, DeMarcus Robinson has more snaps than anybody on the roster on the outside. You got Cooper Kupp, who's interchangeable. Van Jefferson's interchangeable. Puka Nacua can be, your gadget guy, right? I mean, there are different looks that they can get with these guys than Tyler Johnson. Like if he's going to be on the roster, he can play the slot. He could be your third down, possession receiver over the middle. It's interesting. One last thing I want to throw out there for you. I don't know if you've been following. I don't blame you if you haven't. It really isn't out there. So I figured I'd put it out there. So the supplemental draft is back. And the Rams in the past have used the supplemental draft. They used it once. It was a while ago, but they used it on Isaiah Battle, if you remember that offensive tackle, is the fifth round. And look, the supplemental draft, it's hit or miss. Really liked the Beal cornerback, Sam Beal, who went to the Giants, did nothing. So I really liked him coming out, did nothing. But then you have Jalen Thompson, who I really liked. He came out of the supplemental draft. He's turned himself into a stud over in Arizona as a safety. So we have one so far, Alexis, that has declared and has been accepted into the supplemental draft. And that is Purdue wide receiver Milton Wright, who I think is worth a 5th round supplemental pick. And for those of you who don't know what that means, the Rams spent a 5th round pick, and now their 5th round pick in 2024 is now, that's what they used or not. Like it's gone. So that's what that means. Alexis, I don't know how much you know about Milton Wright. I watched him. And I got to tell you, I think he reminds me a little bit of A.T. Perry. Had a really good 2021 season. He was academically ineligible in 2022. The Rams still, like even after getting DeMarcus Robinson, listening to Sean McVay, he feels non-committal. They just feel non-committal about that position. Where are you at on Milton Wright? If you know him, if you don't, I don't know. Give me your thoughts. Like, because for me personally, a 5th round pick, I'd do that. I'd prefer 6th, but a 5th round pick, I mean, this is somebody that they were expecting. Purdue really thought he could take the next level in 2022, and he just was academically ineligible.
I don't know Milton Wright, so I can't comment on that. I will say I think it's intriguing that the NFL is bringing back the supplemental draft.
Yeah.
I think the
computer draft.
It has to do, I think, a lot with like things like the XFL and the USFL. And I think that there's kind of this movement of trying to bring in, more players, aside from players that are just obviously, NFL drafts, eligible or, standout talent, which I think is cool. So I'm all for it. I don't know that the Rams will make a pick.
I mean, it's very like the odds are, all 32 teams, the odds are it's very unlikely that they're the team. I don't know where they're picking. Dane Brugler of The Athletic reported it kicks off July 11th. And mind you, it's kind of a meme, right? Because the supplemental draft is not the NFL draft. There are guys in a room on a laptop. That is it. It is a laptop draft, essentially. It's just funny, a giant corporation or giant business like the NFL, it's on a laptop. But it hasn't happened since 2019. COVID kind of ruined it. Then you talk about those leagues. It almost makes me wonder, Alexis, with the reported, what was it? The Rock or the XFL lost $50 million this year. It almost makes me wonder if this is like them saying, all right, we're not feeling too great about what we're hearing about these leagues, and we're bringing back the supplemental draft, and it's going to stay. And I don't know, maybe I'm looking too much into it, but I just think, they've been non-committal to the wide receiver group outside of, Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson. I think when you look at it, they've picked, Les Snead has made a pick in the supplemental draft before with Isaiah Battle out of Clemson. And, I just think that at 6'2", 200 pounds, guy that can go up, high point the football. He's got good long speed, straight line speed. I mean, not amazing. Good route runner. His first 2 years, he has less than 600 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then his junior year, he goes for 50 receptions for 732 yards and 7 touchdowns. So I think like the increase there, Aiden O'Connell looked like he was really on the same page with him, and they really missed him in 2022. So it's just something to consider. I think a 6th round pick is a no brainer for me. I would definitely do it because worst comes to worst, he doesn't work out and you cut a 6th round pick. But it'd be nice to get him in that room and just kind of, go with the whole may the best man win. And I think if they go out and get him, it definitely complicates things. Like, where are they going? How many receivers are they going to have? Like, I don't know, because at that point you'd have Kupp, you'd have Van, you'd have Atwell, you'd have Skoranek, you would have Puka Nacua. That's 5 right there. DeMarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, Lance McCutcheon. That's 8. And then, and I don't mean to, rule out all the other guys, but come on now. And then you have Milton Wright. So there's a lot of guys in that room if they draft Milton Wright. Even if they don't, there's a lot of guys. But I think really it makes the Rams receiver room better because, he comes in and, he pushes some of the other guys and who knows, but at the same time, it's a July draft. He misses all of rookie minicamp. He misses all of, mandatory minicamp. He gets in right in time for training camp, but has to play catch up. So maybe it's a doomed pick from the start. Maybe he's never going to make the roster and it's better off just, okay, if he's there, if he's available, he goes undrafted, we sign him. I don't know. But just figured I'd throw that name out there because for our listeners, our viewers, you're going to start hearing his name. There's not a lot going on during the dead period, aka June and July. There's not much to report from minicamp except, a guy looked really good in shorts and a jersey. But training camp is around the corner, and I think this is the time where during this dead period, you're going to hear about it. And we'll probably find out other guys about the supplemental draft. But yeah, Milton Wright, it's the only guy that we know is going to be in it so far. That could change over the next week or so, but Milton Wright, look out for him. Maybe he's a future Ram receiver, maybe he's not, but it's worth mentioning his name.
Supplemental draft, July 11th, guys. If you didn't know, it's
tune in.
Yeah, well, I don't even know that you can.
You can't.
You can't. It's like they had the XFL draft on yesterday, Friday, and they're
already doing that.
Yeah, they had one. The picks are out, but this is how they did it. They were like, we're having it it was at 10 a.m. my time. It was 11 Eastern in the morning. But it was not televised, and they announced the pick at night. Like they all did the draft, and then they just released a list Friday night of here were the picks, and I was like, that was a bummer. Like I wanted to watch or somehow follow along with the draft, and it was just totally private. So that's kind of how the NFL supplemental draft is going to go. So it's on July 11th, but you can't watch it, guys.
It's just going to be like
see if leaks come out or something like that, but
yeah. It'll be like Adam Schefter reports that this guy was drafted in the supplemental draft, and that is the entire draft.
Yeah. Earlier this morning, there was a draft, and X player was drafted by this team. Moving on.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
To each their own. Doesn't matter how you get in the league as long as you get in the league. It's just
as long as you get a shot.
It's a meme. Like, we can't act like it's not. It's a laptop draft, right? Like, good players that go in it, but it's like, man, at least add a little bit more pizzazz to it. Like, my God, it's like, I don't know. The example is like getting married at a courthouse. That's the perfect example. It's like, there's not really a lot of pizzazz, but the thing is, you're forced into it as a supplemental draft pick. Like, you get the call, you were drafted. Okay, that's cool. Like, I'm sure he'll be excited if he gets drafted. I hope he does, because, the academic thing was kind of ridiculous depending, but we'll see.
We'll see. But yeah, I think we pretty much covered, what we had on our agenda for today. It's off season, so it's, news comes in slowly but surely. We could get a ton of news as soon as we stop recording this, or we could go 2 weeks without any. That's just the time of the year that we're in. But guys, we're a month and a half from preseason, so it'll be here before we know it. And it's always fun to record during preseason because we always have a lot to talk about, and we can watch those games and see who makes it 53. So, but we'll be back before then. We just have zero idea what the news will be next time we're back.
No, we really don't. Hopefully we get some stuff, some juicy stuff, and good stuff, not like injuries, and that's awful. But
I know.
Yeah, maybe this Milton Wright ends up as a Ram. Who knows?
We will see, and we will report it to you if that is the case. But guys, that's going to do it for us for now. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. You can follow us on social media at Downtown Rams. You can follow me on Twitter at the Alexis Kraft with a K. You can follow Jake at Ellenbogen, and we will be back soon. But until then, guys, stay safe, take care, and go Rams.